Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo alongside you guys. Again, we just want to reiterate our thanks and all the support you guys have been giving us here on the channel. So don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify. Follow us there. Give us 5 stars. Follow us on That Milan Pod on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel here. Subscribe to our other channel at That Milan Podcast. Again, doing really great on TikTok and every other social media platform right now. So we are thriving, even though the club is not. With that, Santangelo, how are you doing? Weather finally getting really nice up here in the northeast of the U.S.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's been busy with work and busy in the personal life, so it's just kind of squeezing in content any way we can. And obviously, we have a lot to talk about. Obviously, the fact that Milan, they're not participating in the Club World Cup, but there are still a lot of storylines and things to discuss surrounding them. So,
yeah, so a lot of it was really important to kind of note for some people is that clubs in the Club World Cup are able to purchase players, whereas, a club like Milan is really kind of only able to sell right now. So you see a lot of people like panicking, like, why isn't this getting done? Liberali's contract, why aren't they buying players? Well, they kind of go. And then obviously we see this sale that we could just hop right into, I guess, right? And pretty much the biggest news that we've seen in terms of a sale outside of Rangers. There wasn't much movement with Maignan and Theo. We'll get into that soon enough. But Yunus Musah. So we kind of were wondering when we were doing end of the season stuff, discussing Tade, Allegri coming in, what kind of midfielders and other players would be on the chopping block besides, the bigger 3 names with Rangers, Theo, and Maignan. And Musah was one of the ones that was kind of up in the air for some people in terms of what they were thinking would happen with him. And It seems like it's just pretty much done at this point. And as DiMarzio reported, it's at the bottom of the ticker here, that they're really just down to the final details. Multiple reports are saying 20 million plus bonuses that go up to 25 million euro. So your initial thoughts on kind of moving on from Musah and what this kind of means for his career and a little bit from a U.S. men's national team perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not going to come on here and change my tune around Yunus Musah. I think we talked about him in great detail this entire season and really since he arrived, right? There have been glimpses of him showing that he is a good quality player and there is a good midfielder in there, right? But those flashes, those glimpses, they've come too infrequently in the past 2 seasons. And at this point in time, Milan need players that can help them turn this around in the immediate, in the short term, right?
Yeah.
It's not like what it was back, ahead prior to the start of this recent decade, right? In 2018, 2019, where Milan were going after Benacer, Leao, Theo, a lot of younger players that look are maybe a little bit cheaper, but you're buying into the potential of what they could be, and you're hoping they pan out. Milan need players now, and especially if you're going to sell a guy like Tijani Reinders to help fund everything, right? You need players that are going to be able to help you next season. And Max Allegri needs players that, more importantly, can play to his style, play to his identity and his vision for what he wants for this Milan. So I think when I look at Yunus Musah and I look at a lot of the conversation around it, it seems like it's been universally approved and well received in the sense that I think people got tired of Yunus Musah last year. There were a lot of moments in which he was kind of, frames were taken and he did not look good. He did not look like a player that was heading in the right direction. And truthfully, in his defense, not many players looked like they were heading in the right direction. A lot of players really regressed. Malik Chow, a lot of other players that are younger in that same sort of category, they didn't seem to take that next step either. So I don't think this is necessarily not a Yunus Musah thing. I think that, again, we saw glimpses of versatility. We saw what he was able to do in certain matches, specifically the one that stands out to me is the Real Madrid game. I thought that probably was his best performance in a Milan shirt, truthfully, or at least the one that stood out to me the most. I think that Milan fans can't get wrapped up in what he could potentially become under Antonio Conte and Napoli. I think that people are looking at that and saying, well, maybe we should reconsider it. The fee is very good. It's a fixed fee. I'm actually shocked that Milan are getting a fixed fee on this and not some sort of loan with option to buy.
Like the Okafor deal, yeah.
Right. Like the fact that they're getting like more money and they're going to turn a small profit based on the numbers we're seeing from the initial investment from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You take that, if he becomes a good player for Napoli, tip of the cap to him. He did his best here. This was a player that didn't have attitude issues. He carried himself well under multiple coaches. He played where he was asked to play. He just didn't live up to the expectation. And I think that's what Milan fans really have to take away from this, is that that's a good fee for a player that truthfully didn't really have a future here beyond the end of this past season.
Yeah, it's just amazing contradictory, takes from some Milanisti, and I understand where they're coming from to an extent. And I said this multiple times, and we talk about this about players over the years too, where you're playing so up and down, right? More of a roller coaster. So there were some good performances by Musah, and then the obvious regression. Some of the issues that were persisting didn't really go away. Final third decision making, just the efficiency, right? When is he shooting? When is he not shooting? Really, the only goal, quote unquote goal, he scored at the club was a deflection off of Gatti in the Supercoppa against Juve. So there wasn't really that sort of production. And I like to also point out to some people that were saying, oh, well, Musah was never played in a consistent position and all that. Well, he didn't solidify himself, and he didn't play well enough in those positions to warrant him starting there. Sure. Do I like moving a young player around to right wing, right back, right wing back, midfielder, box to box? No, not necessarily. But at the same time, when have we ever saw consistent performances from him to say, oh, you can't move him off the midfield? He's playing well there. There were a lot of issues. We can't forget about the Dinamo Zagreb game where he gets a double yellow. It's just not really intelligent plays. Sure, he's very young. He's got potential. I've mentioned it in the short video that I posted on our YouTube channel and on TikTok. This could play out well for all sides. For Milan, you keep him another year, Matt, like you were saying, he'd be under a fourth manager. 4 managers for a player. Say it doesn't work out, then we're in this position where we're kind of at with like a Pobega and an Adli where we don't know how to get rid of them. They're really not worth much.
And then people are going to be loathing management even more than they already are now, which I'm not defending management, but like if they turn this player off the season he had into 25 million, I think you just take that and you say like that was one of the rare good moves that they've made so far. Like
right. And I think the other point to reiterate on that is like, hey, like he stays and stinks, to your point, like what are they gonna do? And if he goes and plays for Napoli and he plays well for them, I get it. Direct competitor.
Good for the men's national team.
It's good for the men's national team if you're American. But I think the key point here is that people should be worried about Milan. And what's best for Milan in this deal is to sadly move on from a player who does have some potential. I think under Antonio Conte, this is great. This is a player who's going to be versatile for what he likes to do in his systems and change it up, 3 at the back, whether it's 4 at the back. He's going to find a spot for him, and he has a fantastic work rate. The things that he's good at are the stuff that Antonio Conte loves.
He's going to tap into a lot of those things. And I think the one thing too, just Martino, to add on to it, he played a substantial amount this year. Like I think people have to understand the fact that Milan were these past couple of seasons playing in the Champions League, playing in Europa League. They didn't have this most stable situation when it came to the midfield. How many times this year did we see it? Tijani Reinders Fofana or Reinders and Musah. Musah played upwards over 1,500 to 1,600 minutes across all competitions. Last year, he played around the same thing. So I understand people looking at the age and the fact that he moved around so frequently as arguments for why maybe they should see this out and give it a shot. I think that when you weigh that, if the fee was 10 million, then I could see people being like, whoa, like we're moving on from this guy. We're giving him to Napoli for 10 million. Like this is what we're doing. We can't get a better fee from a West Ham. I think Daniele Longo said something that there was potential interest there, but Napoli were ahead. The fee is 25 million. Like this is something that you can turn back into the market and get a player that fits Allegri's system that, in my opinion, probably gives you more guarantees than Musah will this year. It's not like a situation where we saw, again, like a steady run of play under Sergio Conceição towards the end of the season where we could be like, no, we can hang our hat on that. He played really well under a coach who had very little time to integrate himself in a span of months. Let's see this out. Let's see this out for another season. I think Milan, with all the restrictions that they're going to have with their budget this summer due to no Champions League and no European competition next year, and the amount of changes at a wholesale level they need to make, I'm not losing sleep over this. This, again, no disrespect to Yunus Musah, but this is a good fee for a player that, in my eyes, he's not Milan quality right now and not what they need in the midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think fans should get too upset about it, because if you were told prior to this window you get 25 million for Yunus Musah,
Everyone's signing that.
I bet you exactly everyone's just going to say yes. So speaking of around that fee of 25 million, Mike Maignan failed transfer pretty much with Chelsea. I think a lot of this is a leverage battle between Milan ownership and Chelsea management. We know the sort of relationships that they've had over the years. I see a lot of Chelsea fans, supporters, really complaining about Milan asking for a fee of 25 million for a goalkeeper on the final year of his deal in the middle of his prime. Need I remind you how much money Milan paid for 1 year left of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, an injury-prone player with plenty of inconsistencies in his game, and Milan met the asking price of around 20 million euro. So again, sure, Milan don't have much leverage. Maignan wants out. He wants to go and play for Chelsea. Great, cool. We knew Pulisic wanted out. We still paid. We knew Loftus-Cheek wanted out. We still paid. I don't understand the sort of hypocrisy coming from fans, but they are supporters. I like what Tade is doing here. Meet our price or there's the door. And it'll get into like a slightly bigger conversation about keeping him and our left back, Theo Hernandez, because I think every fan and even Tade is correct in saying we shouldn't be accepting these disrespectful offers from Atletico and Chelsea where they're not even coming close to our mark. Like, I'm sorry, on their consistencies over the past 5 seasons, these are two players who are top 10 in their position. Theo, clearly in the top 5. So when we're getting in offers for, Theo's like 16 to 17 million, and Maignan, they're struggling to get to 20 million on an offer and not reaching that 25 million. To me, I agree 100% with Tade. I also actually rather keep Maignan for the season if this is the case where they don't want to pay up. Him staying and helping us get back into the Champions League is more valuable than actually just selling him for 18 million euro. And I will stand by that. And I know some people are just going to be like, oh, well, you got to get a fee. You can't just let him walk. It's like, well, we also have goals and objectives to meet. Because if we're getting less on the market for key players that are obviously of interest to Chelsea, then what are we doing here? So for me, I like that we stood pat here and stood firm on a number that they should meet, and there's plenty of time. It's only June 11th. But yeah, Mike Maignan staying, cool with me. And if Chelsea doesn't meet that offer, same thing. So what are your kind of thoughts on this? I would like to get it resolved with Maignan, and there's also been tons of rumors saying that Allegri is really keen on keeping Mike Maignan because he's key for his project here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I've made it very clear that I would like to keep Maignan, regardless of his contract situation, whatever the case may be. I think that people might be looking at the fact that maybe, he's regressed the past couple seasons, and I won't necessarily disagree with you. I'm not saying this is a player that's at the peak of his powers, what we saw in his first couple seasons at Milan, where he replaced Gigio Donnarumma, and Donnarumma became an afterthought. He became history very quickly because Mike Maignan was such a great performer in net. Won Serie A goalkeeper of the year his first season. Milan were the Scudetto winning champions, and obviously we saw how it played out, in the seasons after that, right? This is a player that, yes, has the occasional gaffe. He had a couple this year, in some pretty key moments, but I thought that in the second half of the season, I thought he played well amidst all the turmoil and hysteria and dysfunction around this team. And I think that if you're Milan, you have to be a little cautious and careful with how many changes you make. And I understand that, Tijani's gone. Like, we're not going to beat that one down anymore. He's gone. He's been announced. That's what it is, right?
Yep.
But I'm a firm believer in that. I think you need to keep some semblance of a group that fans can identify with, and that when you look at this team, okay, they got Mike Maignan. He's a reference point. He's a leader. He's someone that's been
in the past 6 months.
He's won at this club. He's experienced crazy highs, crazy lows. Same thing with Rafa. Like, I think that there is a level of importance to that now, as we've seen with players over the past couple seasons, and history tells us every player has its price. If he is not going to renew and Chelsea says like, hey, we'll give you 25, 30 million for him, I wouldn't necessarily say don't take that. But to offer 15 million, when the truth of the matter is this, Milan can't get a replacement good enough for that figure. That's how I feel about it. Like if you're going to say we're going to take Mike Maignan, Chelsea's going to come in with an offer, okay, well, you're going to have to give us at least near 25 million because that's what it's going to cost us to get a Milinkovic-Savic. We're not going to get Svilar. Looks like he's close with Roma. Suzuki. Like, keepers are not – they're not cheap. And when you're Milan and you have so many other needs, I don't necessarily disagree with standing firm on your figure. Now, does this change the tune with Mike at all? Does he get more pissed and upset about this? I think he's a professional. I think he's looking at this and saying, hey, if they're selling Tijani, they're selling all these guys, I'm only right to want to, seek other options. And then on top of that, they're welching on their deal that we previously verbally agreed on. So I defend him in that sense. But I think that Allegri's presence is going to be key here. And I think that the team made him some guarantees that I don't think previous coaches got. Like Sergio Conceição, who didn't really have a market. He had the January market. They kind of
he's like, make top 4 or you're fired.
Fonseca doesn't have the weight. He doesn't have the pull. He doesn't have the history and pedigree of winning in this league and in the sport that Max Allegri does.
They didn't even have a manager.
I like to think Allegri came on, Atade came on with that sort of caveat saying, like, I need to have a lot of say. I need to have a lot of dictation on what happens when it comes to our transfer policy and who I keep and because if he puts his foot down and he says, I want to keep Rafa and Mike Maignan and those guys stay, then I think it kind of gives me a little glimmer of hope that, okay, I'd like to think Max Allegri, who knows what it takes to win at this club and knows what it takes to win at the highest level in this league, can come in and maybe he can assemble a winning team and we can get back on the right track.
Yeah. And it's very important to note what you're saying. And they were talking about this on the Milan Weekly podcast. So our guys, shout out Vinny, Fabio, and then they had Giuseppe from Milan Club New York. And Giuseppe made a great point, and I have made this point in multiple videos of like, hey, everything Tade and Allegri have to deal with in terms of Reinders, Theo Hernandez, and Mike Maignan situations, that all happened because of Forlani and the management that was in place prior to that. What Tade is inheriting and Allegri are inheriting are a chaotic situation. And I'm not saying Maignan is going to stay. If you were to ask me today on who's staying or going, I would say he and Theo are also both leaving. But I do think, to your point, there is some hope to kind of salvage the situation because on the table, and this goes, again, I mentioned all the points and the indecisiveness of this management. We saw it in the January transfer market where they had signings, they flipped on them. They hired Fonseca, they flipped on him. They gave him like 6 months. Where they did the same thing to Mike Maignan, where they had the offer for €5 million on the table. Then all of a sudden, supposedly a few mistakes rescinds an entire offer that they have verbally agreed to, which to me is like, why are you doing that? Why do a couple mistakes determine that when you saw the full body of work, right? You're never supposed to make decisions based off of a small window, especially with a player like this at this level. He's still wanted by Chelsea. He's still wanted by top clubs. And $5 million, I got to be honest with you, Matt, is really not bad for a keeper of his level. And again, people always want to look at Milan and how high are you of a paid player within this squad and how highly paid you are with all of Serie A. Guys, in terms of the European market, of all the top goalkeepers in the world, there's mediocre goalkeepers in the Premier League that make just as much, if not more than him. $5 million net for a player like this, guys, I'll be honest with you, it's not much. I understand some of the vitriol and annoyance towards Theo Hernandez, who's asking supposedly for $8 to $9 million net, which is like, okay, well, based off your past 2 years, that's a bit much for what you're asking, and you're asking to be the highest paid player by far. If you were coming off great seasons, it's a different conversation. But for me, Mike, like a 5% chance of like, hey, we get off to a great start. You're doing great. You're playing great. Allegri has us in a great position this season, playing once a week. Would you reconsider? Tade tries to mend that relationship. That's the only, and I reiterate this because people like to take things out of context, a very small window for that to happen. So we'll end up seeing what happens there with Mike. As of right now, it looks like he's staying at Milan for next season. Okay, Matt, moving on to our next player here, Theo Hernandez. Rejections across the board for Al Hilal. They end up moving on to Angelino of Roma, who is arguably the best left back in Serie A last year. So a little bit surprising. Roma do have some FFP issues. Gasparini's in there. He'll like his own guys. So that door closed. Basically, not many others are open. And now when Theo, who grew up an Atletico Madrid fan, according to multiple reports, and this has kind of been known, difficult situation for Milan. How did they navigate through this? The offer that came in, again, much like Maignan, I think this one's more insulting and legitimately insulting. I don't care if we like management, dislike management. This is an insulting offer. I don't care who's in charge. 16 to 17 million for a player of this caliber to go to Atletico, who are not cash strapped. It's embarrassing. You at least get to that 20 million euro figure, and then I'll consider the offer. Theo, this one is the most impossible relationship to mend at this point between supporters, for the most part, after seeing what he did in the Champions League, that crash out, the poor performances over basically a year and a half. The only performances people like to highlight and look at are, I guess, the Supercopa final and when he played center back for 2 matches. For me, we know we have to move on. The situation is really poor. We're not going to get a great figure. I think we all know that, but we deserve to at least get 20 million from this. Much like the Mike situation, Matt. And the question is, do you accept anything less for 20 million for Theo Hernandez, or do you keep him on another year and hope he balls out, hopefully under Allegri, and they get back into top 4 or compete for something?
I mean, like, on one hand, I understand where fans are coming from. Like, well, you don't want another repeat of the Hakan and GGO and Kessie situations where you let players walk for free. But I think at some point you do have to kind of put that line in the sand, and there are sporting expectations. And when you look at Theo Hernandez, he hasn't met those sporting expectations relative to what we've seen in recent years in him and what he was able to do. I like the player. I don't think that necessarily we handled negotiations well with these two players to begin with. But I think at some point, again, like, you're setting a dangerous precedent by giving a guy like Theo Hernandez. They wouldn't give him 8 or 9 million. We know that. But if you say you're going to give him 7 to 8 and you're giving him more than Rafa, who I get Rafa had like his down year, right? But like, Theo does not, his performances do not warrant that figure. And I think that this comes down to, it's a domino effect. And this is what Milan is experiencing right now with Theo and with Mike, is the culmination of previous mistakes when it comes to management and not capitalizing on the moment. And not to beat a dead horse, because we've exhausted this entire thing many times and many podcasts with many other guests. But players of this caliber would not be in this situation with one foot out the door, looking to kind of hold Milan, for lack of a better term, hostage with certain wages, if Milan were competing and they were at a high level. And players like Tijani were staying, and there weren't issues about certain players leaving, and you were competing regularly year in and year out. Do Inter have this problem? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what does Nicolo Barella get paid per year? What is Hakan gets paid 6+? He's performing really well. Look at what good players get paid in Serie A when they are also competing for things. Players want to win trophies.
Yeah.
Guys like Theo want to win trophies, especially when you've played at Real Madrid. You've played a little bit at other clubs. You won at Milan. You won a couple trophies. Same thing on Mike Maignan. Like, it's natural for these players to say, you know what, like, I want to make X amount and I want to compete for things. You can make a sacrifice if your team is competing. But if you're going to waste your prime years, you're going to be like, okay, well, I need something out of this, and in the form of a high wage. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, winning cures all. And the fact that Milan haven't done enough of that, and they haven't done enough to keep this group growing, grow this project, and have it being in that conversation where they're competing for silverware year in and year out, is what leads to certain things like this, because now you're in the conversation of, well, we have to get something for him. We can't let a player like this leave for free. Now, Milan this summer can either do one of two things. They could say, you know what, we'll take our chances with Theo. If he walks, he walks. Maybe he helps us get Champions League, because truthfully, if we try to get someone in that is around the same fee that we're getting for him, is that player going to be more of a guarantee than Theo could be? And what would be a prove-it year for him? Because if he has another bad year, some of those offers, some of that interest from some top clubs might not be there, might evaporate. So there is that motivation there for him to be like, look, we know you don't want to sign here. We know that we're not going to meet your number. But we know that you have a lot to lose as well by playing poorly like you did last year. If he comes out and has a great year and Milan get into Champions League and damn, dream scenario, they threaten for a Scudetto or even winner of Scudetto, boy, he's going to have a lot of options. Same thing with Mike. So I think that that's kind of where I'm at with this. Now, getting back to the original question, I agree with you. We can't be a doormat here. This can't be a full-fledged supermarket. We already took, in my opinion, less than we should have for Gianni Reinders. Of course, the market, the negotiations, the bidding war wasn't there for Milan to play hardball. In the case of Mike and Theo, you can't let both these players leave for 50 cents on the dollar. You can't do it. You can't. From optics, it looks very bad.
Yeah. Also, the thing with Theo Hernandez turning 28 in October, the way his game is and is played, the amount of minutes that
built on fitness, built on running, high energy.
The amount of minutes he's also played too. I get where he's coming from in terms of rest. It's mostly on Milan not getting a proper backup. I also think he's just also like steadily declining. Again, this is mostly on Milan. He's played poorly. I will not deny that. I also think he is the best left back. I primarily grew up watching Maldini as a center back, so I don't really have much recollection of him as a left back. So this is the best left back that I've seen at this club. So it is hurting in a way to kind of see how this is unfolding. It's similar to my sentiments towards Donnarumma. I think these players should have been here throughout their prime and the rest of their career. I think they were that talented. But listen, the situation is dire at the club. We all know that. And Tade can't come in here and fix it if Theo also isn't willing to lower his demands. Because if he thinks he can get more money from another club, he's going to be doing that. Like, let's face it. If Tade came in and said, I can pay you around similar to Leao, and Theo was okay with that, then it would have been done. But clearly that's not the case here. Yeah. Final question on these two subjects before we move on to the final topic of the day. Really quick, rapid fire questions. Does Mike Maignan play at Milan next season, Matt?
I say no.
Okay. And then
I say no because I think that Milan are going to have to you think you would assume they would have to cash in on one of them. Let two players walk for free potentially?
Well, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, okay.
I'm just
so
saying.
You're,
like, and,
yes,
and, number, and number two, based
Theo.
on all the reports, are saying like he doesn't want to renew. Like his relationship is soured. Okay, so like you have the entire summer. This isn't something that sort of developed like midway through the season, and now you're heading into the summer. We're now like, okay, like it's now you have to go through the entire summer, and this is a distraction potentially.
Yeah. I get it.
I know the professionals, but like, does Mike make this an issue? Does he hold out and not show? I don't know. Like, I don't know how certain players are. I don't know. So like, I think that Milan might be forced into a position where I think that they're trying to play hardball with Chelsea because they realized Chelsea wanted to get Mike in for the Club World Cup and they had that deadline. So they were like, oh, you want him so bad? Here, 25 million or 30 million. They didn't do it. Okay. Do Chelsea revisit it? Do Chelsea feel that they have 4 keepers or 3 keepers on the books that they deem as being as good as him? I don't know. Does another club come in? I don't really know, but I do think at least one of them does leave. And I think it's going to be Theo. I think they'll find some sort of solution.
So in short, Theo Hernandez, Mike Maignan, both leaving. Yes, in your opinion. It's just a quick yes or no.
Yes. I'm changing my tune, but I guess they both leave.
Okay, that's it. You're good.
I don't know. I know I flipped there. The listeners are probably like, you just said what you said.
You're fine. You're fine. They mix our words up anyways. It doesn't matter. Not you guys, not the cool people. We appreciate all you. Okay, final topic of the day. This one keeps popping up. Dusan Vlahovic to Milan. 1 year left on his deal. Been a complete flop at Juve. I think there's multiple reasons as to why that has happened. We saw that potential at Fiorentina. We were, quote unquote, interested in him at the time. His idol is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Let's face it. That fee was ridiculous. The amount of money that he gets paid is ridiculous. Juve have done little, in my opinion, to build a team around him for him to succeed. I don't think they've hired the right managers, as we've all seen. And I know it's kind of ironic in saying that with Allegri. However, when Allegri and Vlahovic were at Juve at the same time, please let me know the attackers within that Juve side that were really good to help this guy out. Okay? The stuff that Vlahovic controls and what he was good and bad at, I've seen this guy play plenty. I've pretty much watched every Juve game. He misses plenty of chances, lots of chances. And that's on him. You can't blame anyone else. When you're in the area, the ball's at your feet, you either score it or you don't. And there was plenty of times where you're like, how is he missing this? And it's odd because he does have good technique. He's fantastic on set pieces. He's, in my opinion, talent-wise, a complete package. And you were one of the people who got it spot on and saying, I don't think it's a slam dunk for him to go to Juve. I think the larger project and everything that we see at Juve recently is very much also about the club than just the players. And they're very similar to us here at Milan and what they're doing, how they're misprofiling players. Because Vlahovic isn't the only high-profile transfer that has happened at Juve that has flopped. Yeah. Arguably the only relatively expensive transfer that has worked out at Juve, and I'm talking about like 35 million or more within the past few years, is Bremer. That's it. You look up and down the board, Coop Miners, one of the biggest flops in Serie A last year. Gonzalez, Douglas Luiz. We're looking at multiple players here being bought in for a lot of money, and their best signing, and he's a really good player, is Keparin Thuram. And for me, when you see Allegri interested in him, when there's 1 year left on his deal, when you see what he's had to work with and his age, if Dusan Vlahovic, and I'll say this right now, if he's willing to take a substantial pay cut, and he's saying 3.5 million to 4 million net per year, bring him in. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. You bring him in my opinion, you take a risk on a player like that, who I don't necessarily think is awful. I don't think he'll ever reach those heights, Matt, that many expected him to. But this is a former challenger for Capocannoniere. Under the right system and service, in my opinion, this is a good enough player. And also, just the final point before I let you go on this, a fresh start is needed for many players. We just had mentioned it for Yunus Musah. I think in the proper environment, and I think it also matters as to where he wants to go, because if he wants to go to Turkey, Fenerbahce, wherever they're still offering him a lot of money, to me, it's not to insult Turkey or the league or anything like that. To me, it's unambitious. To me, that's not like you don't want to turn your career around. You're more okay with the money. And that's fine. You take your money. It's millions of dollars. It's a job at the end of the day. But if you come to Milan willing to take a pay cut, and I've talked to Ollie Fisher about this, Zlatan, you could make yourself useful for once. Truthfully. Get on the phone with this guy. Tell him you have to come here. You could rebirth yourself like I had a turnaround in his career because things went south at Barca. Come here. You take a pay cut. If things go great, you'll get paid again. If not, then whatever. You don't bring that up. I just think with Milan's situation, they're looking to loan out Camarda. You have Jimenez, who is more of a poacher than anything. Dusan, I think, has more of a complete package of a modern player in terms of talent. I'm not saying the product will be there. That I think it's still worth the risk. I genuinely do. Because the upside for a striker like this, 1 year left on his deal, which is kind of in the wheelhouse of how they want to operate. Allegri supposedly has wanted him and is asking for him. You give your manager what he wants with a striker. You could potentially revive the guy where he's good enough that maybe resale is there. Or Milan have a consistent striker that's been relatively proven in Serie A. And you're looking at a situation now where Jimenez is good, Vlahovic is serviceable, and a good enough striker. I think, again, lastly, on the right wages, this is a move to make. I actually do think that. And that might be controversial to some people because of how he's been at Juve. But under the right circumstances, this is a good move to make.
It's interesting because I think Vlahovic a couple years ago, before he made the move to Juventus, I know that around, football spaces, people were saying he's not Haaland, he's not Mbappe, he's like that next tier below, which is still very good because people were seeing what he was doing at Fiorentina, and even like the very early phases of his Juventus tenure. And I agree with you to an extent when it comes to the handling of things. That there's things that he handled or has not handled when it comes to what's on his plate, and that is the finishing. He's had a ton of moments where you're looking and you're scratching your head. You're like, they spend how much on this guy? Why isn't this guy scoring? Like, he's lost it. We have to move on from him. He's got the physical tools. He's shown he could score in a difficult league that, historically speaking, is not the easiest for players to score in, right? This is a league that can be very tactically humbling for a striker, right?
Correct.
I think that his wages, are going to be a major obstacle, because even if I think he's on like 10 million. He might.
Yeah. No, he's the highest paid player in Serie A.
So if you're asking him to go down to 3 to 4 million, you're asking
4. I think you have to go at 4 as a starter.
You're asking him to take more than a 50% cut, and I don't see that happening, truthfully. I think that he's in a position where he can his agent, whoever's agent, can sell it and pitch it and present it as a way that says, hey, look, this Juventus team has been a disaster the past couple of years. Yes, they made Champions League, but look at how many coaches they've gone through. Look how many players they've gone through. Look at the system. Look at everything. He can go somewhere else. Maybe he goes to a Galatasaray, proves himself, and now he has options and suitors in the Premier League. I don't know. All I know is I think what makes this very confusing, and I think is just more of an indictment of management and how they're trying to set up this entire project, and I use that word very loosely, is you just spent 6 months ago a 30 million for a striker. So now you're going to go and spend 25 to 30 million again for another striker, and then you have a young striker waiting in the wings. You're not bringing in a veteran guy here. Vlahovic is 25, 26. You have Jimenez, who's young. What does that look like for Camarda? Like, are they going to?
I think Camarda goes on loan. I think he goes on loan.
How many times is he going to go on loan? If you get another,
this would be his first time. This would be his first.
No, but I'm just saying, like at 16, 17, like, and you have Vlahovic and Jimenez, and say like they're producing and they're doing pretty well, and Milan are thriving to an extent offensively. Camarda at this age is, how many minutes is he going to get?
Well, here's the thing. That's why you loan him out, and I think they only do this move if he's loaned out. And the idea is, and we know how they operate, Matt. They're going to flip one of these strikers, and I think that's the very obvious move that they would do. And I totally agree and get where you're coming from. Does he want to take a wage cut or whatever? I'm just saying, 16 goals in the final year with Allegri in Serie A is not awful. And
I don't know, man.
I'm just going through it again. 7 goals in the 15 matches when he immediately arrived. The very poor campaign in 22-23, where he only played 27 matches, he had 10 goals. But across the years, 29 goals combined with Juve and Fiorentina that one year, 18 goals last season, and then just this past season he had 15 in total in an abysmal and real poorly functioning Juve side. Again, 4 million net with bonuses that could go up to 5. I think this is a risk worth taking. I think that someone like Zlatan has to play a huge role in this to try and convince him, as well as his former manager, Max Allegri. I think it's something that you absolutely look into, because this Camarda thing, I love the talent. I love the player. I prefer keeping him, have like another second option, but he's got to play. He's got to go somewhere. And that's the reality of it. And this whole thing of like him playing at Milan at this point, they're not going to do it. They're not going to play the kid, because they know at the end of the day, it's still a risk to play him, even though I don't agree with it, that they have to get back into the Champions League. And if they're going with this, then that happens. Or the other route that ends up happening, Jimenez stays. There's a third striker they bring in on a loan, maybe keep Jovic, and Camarda is used as the third one. They wait till January. If Morata comes back from Galatasaray, they run with Morata for a little bit longer under, again, his former manager. This is how they're going to be looking at the situation, I think.
I'm
not saying it's good.
No, I don't think Milan are exactly in the position of need and should be in the position of desire to be going after a striker that is going to probably cost you 25 to 30 million, because it's coming from Juventus. Let's assume they give us a little bit of a discount, or they give us a little haircut on that because of the finesse job that they did for Kalulu for us, because Kalulu is very good. We got him for a cheap loan, and now they have a 14 million option, and he's going to play a pretty good role for them the next season, right? Milan have so many different needs, Martino. Like, I'd rather see them put that 30 million in whatever, 25, 30 million, let's call it that, in the midfield, in the central defense. They need, how many midfielders do they need, Martino?
Well, with Modric and Probably like 2 more.
2? I think 3.
They're going to keep Loftus-Cheek. I don't think they're going to be selling off all those guys. They're going to have
Well,
Loftus-Cheek.
whether they keep them or not is another thing. I'm just saying to you, do they need? Like, if you're
But they're
looking
going
at
to
that midfield and
okay,
saying,
and then I get you, but they're going to, again, I look at it through their perspective. They're going to see it. We're playing once a week. How many players do we really need now for depth? They're not going to look at it like that.
I'm not looking at depth, Martino. I'm looking at starting quality.
Well, how many midfielders are you going to start week in, week out?
Are they going to play a 4-3-3, a 4-3-1-2, 4-2-3-1 with formation?
The rumored is 4 at the back, so either 2 to 3 midfielders. So you're looking at
if you're playing 2 to 3 midfielders,
Fofana, Loftus-Cheek. There's Warren Bondo, and then you get 2 other midfielders. Where are the 3 coming from?
But where's like the next where's the quality? Like
what quality are you buying when you're in 8th place?
I understand that, but you have to also be a little bit ambitious, because if you're going to sell someone like Tijani Reinders, you can't get a schlub in there.
I'll say this right now. I have no interest in Samuel Ricci for 35 million. I have no interest.
I'm not saying.
No, I know. I'm letting people know that'll like.
I'm just saying, like, the names. So you're basically starting midfielder is going to be Ruben Loftus-Cheek, a 40-year-old Modric, and Fofana. And that's what you're going to try to get.
We're going off of like just today, though. Like,
no,
they're obviously going to get another midfielder.
But that's what I'm saying to you. Like, if I had my choice, I'd rather say, you know what? I'd rather spend the money. We have a striker. We bought someone that we've only given 5 months.
They're getting 90 million in for 2 midfielders, is what's happening, and that's just now. And then they're going to sell more. I get what you're saying.
And they need central defenders.
For me, I think you instantly move in for Martin Frendrup of Genoa. You go in and you pay the fee. I'm not sitting here paying 35 million for Samuel Ricci. If you want to do that, then you don't want to win. I'm sorry. That's not a good deal. That's never been a good deal. I like him for anywhere between 25 to 30 on top of another midfielder. 35 million for that guy is not worth it. I'm sorry. I don't know what people see for him taking another level. Like, and he's played more than what Tonali did, right? At that point when we bought Tonali.
Yeah.
Tonali was blue chip. Everyone knew he was going to be great. And they still managed to work down the fee. Samuel Ricci has been around for quite some time, made good leaps in his career. But 35 million, my goodness, you need more guarantees. We'll see what happens. And again, this is the selling point in the window. Tade and Allegri are the only ones that get the benefit of the doubt. And I'm sure it's a smaller window for most people. But we'll see. So again, it really just looks like the 2 big sales at this moment in time. And I say big with Musah. You're basically getting the guaranteed 10 million on top of the 55 with Reinders. So we'll call it 65, right? 25 with Musah. That's 90. We'll see what ends up happening. I mean, the Kalulu sale counts. How do they do it? We still forgot we have to offload Benacer and Yassine Adli and Tommaso Pobega. Looks like Pobega, by the way, just to wrap things up quickly, Pobega is just a loan deal again because no one wants to fully purchase him. Benacer, that also might be another loan deal back to Marseille because they're not willing to pay the money that they're asking for it. Noah Okafor, I don't know if you saw that rumor. They had
Flamengo.
Yeah. We want to sell a player in his mid-20s who plays in Europe and for Switzerland off to Brazil. Yeah, he's going to accept that, guys. And then again, the other one is Yassine Adli, who, in my opinion, maybe in Allegri's system, he might be keen on keeping him. We'll see what happens there with that. But that's the entire situation.
I saw Malik Chow too, Bayer Leverkusen.
Correct, Chow, and then we'll see what
they just lost Ta to Bayern Munich.
Yeah, and then Chow. Listen, I would actually like to keep him under Allegri, but if Allegri says it's not a big deal, then you're gonna have to trust Max at that point, right?
I don't know, man. I think this team has got. This team's gonna look entirely different, in my opinion. Entirely different. The way you look at the way things are shaping up, it has to. Almost like it has to, minus a couple players. Like who feels like they have job security within this team?
I think there's 3 players that have job security, or 3 or 4 players that have job security that are not currently like on the way out. If you take out Mike and Theo, it's really just Rafa. It's Pulisic, it's Fofana still to me. I think Jimenez obviously has a guaranteed spot in the squad. And Yeah, but I mean, I more so meant starters, I guess I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Gabbia is going to stay in the squad. He's a
Jimenez
useful Italian
probably.
player. Jimenez, which they also still have to kind of like reevaluate that, but I'm not fully convinced Max will love him. Salamakers, I think, stays for now unless they
Yeah.
want to sell him. But yeah, you're right. But also, like at the same time, some people will get upset at that. But it's like, guys, 8th place. So
Oh no, I'm just
no, I
saying like
know what you're
they have a
saying.
ton they have like a ton of work to do, and that's what it makes like that's getting back to that's why I was so like strongly like making my statement about Vlahovic, because I'm like, we're not in the position of luxury where we're able to spend 30 to 40 on another striker. Like we're gonna have so many needs. On that sales side, like bro, you have look, there's so many guys that we haven't mentioned. Like the guys like Emerson Royale and Chukwueze.
Yeah,
There's
Royale
certain
too.
guys that you're looking at, you're like, what? Like players that really you have to move on for. You have to try to find some sort of solution from. So it's like it just goes to show you how much that management over the past 2 seasons have poorly assembled this team, because you have very few assets you want to keep. There's a lot of depreciating assets on this team, and they're depreciating very quickly.
Are you? I know that's the last question, but like it's just, do you feel a little bit better about other player sales considering what Yunus Musah just went for, or
Yeah, I mean,
like
yes.
getting a decent fee for like a Chukwueze is kind of what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. I mean, I do, and I just again, like, I just kind of goes back to like Tade comes in, and I know the Tijani things like that's like
Yeah, it was before him. Yeah,
right, but like him coming in and it's like Musa for 25, which again off the top we discussed how we feel about that. It's like, man, like a competent director is able to come in here and make a good sale without us getting finessed. Like if this is Furlani making the deal, it's 12 million, like a 15 million option to buy.
yeah.
To look, I mean, look what we saw with Noah Okafor. Like alone with a 25 million option to buy that they were never going to pay.
It
Never
was
going
it
to
was it,
It's
you
just
know,
like
objectively, it was like probably the funniest loan I've ever seen.
I'm looking at
Um,
it, and I remember like replying to Moretto or like whoever. I was like 25 minutes. Like this is kind of
a
ridiculous. There's no
typo.
way.
Yeah.
Like
I listen. I think what they're looking at, what could happen, is 30 million combined for Chuk and Okafor. Would you say yes to that? I think that would be good. I think it's recuperating something.
yeah, I mean
Even though, listen, same thing, same logic I applied to Musa Chukwueze. I like the player. It's not working, so you got to get rid of him. Because otherwise it'll get worse. So yeah, again, thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. We're at That Milan Podcast everywhere, at That Milan Pod on Twitter. Go and follow Matt everywhere at Matt_Santangelo, and the account that he runs with his brother at AC Milan Bros on Twitter as well. You can follow me at Martino Puccia at Martino_Puccia on Instagram. And again, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to our other channel, That Milan Pod. We appreciate all the support. Audio plays have been fantastic. We've been doing great on views on here. Again, give us some more topic ideas that you want us discussing. Hopefully we can get a guest or two on very soon. We're talking to some of them to really just discuss the overall, situation at Milan in terms of ownership and buying and selling the club itself. So stay tuned for that. Matt, any other final comments?
yeah, I just want to thank all the loyal listeners, viewers, those who have subscribed, who have followed us on our social channels. We really appreciate it. I know it's going to be a chaotic summer market. I mean, it kind of already has been if you've been following a lot of the transfer stories, the buzz, the rumors, all that stuff. So anything that becomes formal, any negotiations that are in advanced stage, we will obviously cover in here. And again, in the comments, if you guys have any suggestions as far as like guests that we would benefit from having on, whether it be, I know like many creators that are not just Milan creators. I know we always shout them out, but like we're talking about Vlahovic and Allegri. I know Lex, who's a big Juventus supporter.
Alexa, yeah.
Sharma, who's a big inter creator. Like there's a lot of other creators out there. So if there's any creators that you feel like you would enjoy seeing us have on the show, let us know.
Absolutely. We appreciate you guys so very much. Take care.